Thank you, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We are down to our second session, and let's see what we can do to enhance it. Before I begin, I'm basically going to introduce each one. I think you can read a lot on the slides, so I will not get into details. The only reason why is that I would like more conversation today, and I would like it with you, the students and family members, Independent University, Bangladesh. And let me just begin it out by throwing a few things at you. You've heard the word cross the Rubicon. And Rubicon, small river, you cross it, essentially when Julius Caesar did it, 49 BC, it was seen as treason. If he had not crossed it, there would not have been a Roman Empire, but it showed what future dictators are going to do. But it is something we still use today. Cross the Rubicon, such a small river, smaller than the Buriganga. And it has world fame. Now let's go to another symbol like that. Rock of Gibraltar. Rock of Gibraltar, do you know that it has a Muslim origin? General Tariq. General Tariq from Morocco, 711, when he crossed over, Jabal al-Tariq eventually became Gibraltar. And at that time, the rock was not so famous. It would be famous after the Islamic control of Western Europe. That's when the British came in. And at that time, Great Britain had become the largest naval power anywhere. And Gibraltar was pivotal for that. So the Rock of Gibraltar was really the strength of Great Britain, the greatest naval power before the nuclear age. And now, can I bring all of that down, Ambassador Tariq Bhai? Can I bring all of that down to the Bay of Bengal? How can we make that such a global symbol? One way we can start is keep something at bay. What do we keep at bay? And can we begin discussing that today, beginning with this university, your consumption, what you have? If you see anyone in this room after today going buying polythene or anything like that, you have seen a very superficial presence here. We have to spread that message, and we will do it boldly, we will do it loudly, and we will do it correctly so it comes out. Against that background, let's see what our distinguished panelists have in mind to share with us in our growth, intellectual growth phase. I am extremely delighted to introduce my own Vice Chancellor first. He will be presenting, and I would like to welcome you, Professor Tanvir Hassan, to share with us some of your thoughts on the Bay of Bengal.
Thank you. I feel honored to be here, but you are asking the wrong person. I am an accounting and professor and a finance professor. So next time you have a meeting like that, please send me bullet points on time and don't embarrass me like this. Anyway, His Excellency, let me grab my Vice Chancellor is expected to speak and open a lot of different type of events. And it is the job of the people who organize them to make sure the Vice Chancellor looks good. His Excellency, Mr. Muhammad Shahriar Alam MP, Honorable State Minister, Minister of Foreign Affairs of People's Republic of Bangladesh. His Excellency, Mr. Ito Naoki, the Japanese Ambassador to Bangladesh. His Excellency Professor Sudarshan D.S. Senevirante, the High Commissioner of Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka to Bangladesh. Honorable guest speakers, Commodore Mohammed Nurul Absar, Chairman and founder of Central Foundation for International and Strategic Studies, and Dr. Damaru Balabah, Director, BIMSTEC Secretariat. Respected faculty, senior management, and honored guests, good afternoon to you all. It is my genuine pleasure to welcome you to our wonderful campus. I'm especially happy to welcome those of you who have worked your entire careers in diplomatic governance and foreign services, because your presence with us today serves to highlight one of my most important mandates for IUB, to create a true international university. As I mentioned this morning, United Nations Day is an annual commemorative day reflecting the official creation of the United Nations on October 24, 1945. In 1947, the United Nations General Assembly declared October 24, the anniversary of the Charter of the United Nations, as the day which shall be devoted to making known to the people of the world the aims and achievements of the United Nations and to gaining support for their work. That, of course, was 70 years ago. The objectives of the UN mission, always so important to the stability, security, and democracy of the world, has taken a turn towards much more essential goals. As I said in the morning, I recently came back to Bangladesh after spending 34 years in the US to take over as the new Vice Chancellor of IUB with some specific goals. And as you can see, I'm still learning the local etiquettes, the way things are run, and the way things are organized. We need to work hard. One thing I know for sure, we need to work hard to bring diversity to our campus through curriculum and other tools to help our students to be globally conscious citizens. For example, we are actively planning to establish meaningful exchange programs, both for students and faculty with other countries, foster the understanding of the Millennium Development Goals among our students. And as I declared in the morning, that I have requesting our concerned department to estimate our footprint, carbon footprint on campus, and how we can reduce that footprint. As you know, you had a specialized session, and for lack of better briefing, I don't have the audacity to talk about Bay of Bengal or anything of that nature. I'm not a climate specialist, nor am I a Bay of Bengal specialist. So I am not expected, in the absence of briefings, to talk much about it. Rather, I would talk about what's happening at IUB. As I said, IUB is transforming. This year alone, we have received research grants from multilateral agencies amounting $3+ million. We also received Taka 4.8 crore in personal donations for our students and programs in the last 8 months since I took over. And 3 nights ago, at a dinner, I had a pledge of another 1+ crore taka, which I haven't signed the deal yet. So more money is on the way for our programs, for our students, and for our faculty members. Why am I raising this money? I'm raising this money for our betterment of this institution and to create certain centers and programs that truly is going to make a contribution to our national interest. A case in point, in the last couple of months, I established a Center for Lost Languages at IUB. It's been approved. My goal is to have that team work in our hill tracts area and work with these small tribal groups and keep track of their lost languages. And I have Professor Mahmoud Hassan, if you would stand up, please, who is leading this charge on this Center for Lost Languages. Thank you, Professor Hassan. And we would like to work closely and keep track of these lost languages and document them. And no other university in this country has an initiative of that sort. So I'm very proud and very thankful to Professor Mahmoud Hassan, Andalif Chaudhary, Mr. Muzaffar and few other folks, Professor Muzaffar and few other folks who are deeply involved in this project. We also witnessed the largest ever student enrollment in IUB history in the last 2 consecutive semesters since I took over. In summer, we had the all-time high, and then in autumn, we had yet another all-time high enrollment, exceeding the summer enrollments. I also feel very encouraged to see rising enrollment numbers for girls and women at IUB. As a result, we are trying to be more gender inclusive in all campus activities and making sure that they have an adequate representation and voice in all the relevant forums on campus. Based on the inputs received from the female students, I have hired a national winning martial arts coach, a yoga instructor. We're also hiring a basketball coach to establish the first ever girls basketball team in Bangladesh at the university level. I'm looking forward to hearing from the content experts and the distinguished guests in today's session. As I said, I am only limited in finance accounting when it comes to training, academic training, and also I have some exposure in higher education administration, but I cannot possibly have the audacity to talk about other topics unless briefed earlier. So I would urge everybody to be in that mindset that climate is important for us. We need to make our students, our young minds, conscientious of how they use different products like plastics. And also, I think the sense of responsibility to do volunteer work, I think that's increasing now. That's something I was not taught when I was a kid in Bangladesh growing up. Volunteerism was not in place. And I see that's growing, and that's very encouraging for us. And I think we could use our young minds into this movement and make Bangladesh a better place to live. Because it doesn't matter how much technology shapes us, how much technology takes over, you cannot deny the role of people. We have to be sensitive and kind to our neighbors, our fellow human beings. So I would recommend you all to seek a career at places or at organizations where you are not driven by short-term profit only. Rather, look at the long-term growth. Be with the companies that cares about Earth and the fellow people. So if you make the right career choice, put your extra time into similar activities, I think Bangladesh and the world will be a better place to live. Thank you all so much. Thank you for attending.
Thank you, Professor Tanvir. Before I go on to the next presenter on the trifold, I do have a sad piece of news to share with you, and that our chief guest, the State Minister, His Excellency the State Minister, Shahriar Alam, had a bereavement in his family yesterday, and he has not been able to return on time for today's session. Please join me in wishing all the condolences we have to him, his family members, and eternal peace to his, I believe, someone in-law. I'm not sure whether it was mother or father-in-law, but one in-law family members. Having said that, I would like to move on to the next, our next presenter, and Commodore Absar and I have been some kind of intellectual, we have been getting into a lot of intellectual work together. And I would like to hear some from him representing the Navy regarding the Bay of Bengal. Please.
Respected Chair, Vice Chancellor of IUB, His Excellencies, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. At the very outset, may I express my heartfelt gratitude and thanks to all of you, and especially to the authority of Independent University for inviting me and to be the part of this auspicious gathering. And definitely choosing of today's subject on Bay of Bengal and arranging such a nice seminar, it definitely demands special thanks from all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, sea has always been instrumental in defining the destiny of the world, be it as a means of transportation or as a trade route or as a hub of resources. Oceans and seas has played instrumental role in bringing the people closer, in melting down of the cultures and religions, and definitely it helped in the spreading of ideas and thoughts. And as we stand today in the 21st century, sea is much more important, not only for the military use, but also for economic needs as a common heritage or common destiny of the human being. And when it comes to the Bay of Bengal, it is now a very important to the world, covering an area of 2.173 million square kilometers. It stands at the crossroad of the East and West. The core of Bay of Bengal countries today account for a population of almost 1.78 billion and a GDP of 7.8 trillion US dollars, as mentioned by Ambassador Tariq Karim in his recent article, Asia, which was published in Asia Pacific Bulletin. So Bay of Bengal is hugely significant today. The tale of the Bay of Bengal is a saga of rise and fall and reawakening of the turbulent sea. As back as 700 BC, the Vanga kingdom controlled many islands and financed overseas explorations. Then we heard about the Prince Vijaya of Bengal, who crossed the Bay of Bengal and conquered and established a kingdom in Sri Lanka. With the influx of the European powers, competition for the colonies loomed large. Apart from the British, the French, the Dutch also developed a stronghold around the bay. In those days, Bay of Bengal was at the center point of many economic and strategic developments. But after the First World War, when the colonies were crumbling, when there was a rise of nationalism amongst the nations of Bay of Bengal, big powers started withdrawing from the Bay of Bengal, and as a result, Bay of Bengal became a strategic backyard. Now, as we stand in the post-Cold War era, Bay of Bengal is once again surfacing as a bay of extraordinary strategic significance. With the rise of Asia in particular, and with the rise of China and India in particular, Bay of Bengal is once again coming to the prominence in terms of geostrategic and geoeconomic considerations. Now, we need to look at this vast maritime domain through the prism of traditional realist and liberalist paradigms. In realist interpretation, the bay is being subjected to the presence of big power navies or regional power rivalry, and that we can feel with the recent floating of the ideas like Pacific pivot by Obama and Quad, and more recently, Biden's initiative of AUKUS. Simultaneously, on the Chinese initiative, there was a strategy of a string of pearls, or the strategy of maritime silk routes. And the recent Chinese program of Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI, is important. Now, whatever we may talk about, BRI or Quad or AUKUS, you have to remember everything passes through the Bay of Bengal. On the other hand, liberal interpretation of the security at sea dealt various international governing activities and suggests that maritime environment be retained as a subject of collective public order and legal regulation. New challenges to human and economic security at sea have also added new dimensions. Hence, it is clear that Bay of Bengal is growing into an economic hotspot and increasingly becoming a geostrategic pivot. Apart from all this, the few critical determinants of the geopolitics of the Bay of Bengal are the politics of energy, the exploitation of the deep seabed minerals, often known as blue acceleration, Rohingya crisis, and not to mention other things. And all these are definitely going to make Bay of Bengal more volatile in the upcoming days. Now, a very important point is to note that whenever there was a arrival of the rising power in the world, there was an incident of rivalry with the incumbent power. Take, for example, the case of the Athens or Sparta. We have seen the Peloponnesian War. Then you can think about Ottomans or the Austro-Hungarian Empire, which brought along the World War I. Then with the rise of the Axis power comprising of the Hitler's Germany, Mussolini's Italy, we saw World War II. So definitely with the rise of the China, we may see conflict and competition at sea. Now, as long as there is a agreement between the countries on rule-based order at sea, we can cherish future days of peace and tranquility. Second important point is that with regard to the human urge for a sustainable development, desire for eco-friendly world, and the United Nations much desired Sustainable Development Goals or SDGs. And for all this, we need to focus on ocean governance. We need to focus on blue economy. We need to focus on the climate change and more significantly on marine spatial planning. Last but not the least, all of us must realize that let it be is a talk about the rule-based order or governing the ocean or facing the climate change related disasters or harnessing the resources of the sea. No individual country is fully capable to do it alone, solve it alone, and rule it alone. In fact, we need to have a concerted effort of all countries. The need for a rule-based maritime order as crucial to the safeguarding the oceans and seas have been underscored repeatedly in recent years. The acknowledgement and echoing of such a format of maritime order signals the intent of the countries concerned to maintain stability and operability in the Bay of Bengal. It is the time to consider the possibility of consensual rule-based order in the Bay of Bengal, and here the regional or sub-regional forums like SAARC, BIMSTEC, BCIM corridor, etc. must be exploited. Even this can be extended up to the ASEAN countries. And we have to remember bilateralism should be given way. Multilateralism should be given priority instead of bilateralism. And principle of reciprocity should be given due importance. A comprehensive ocean governance framework of the Bay of Bengal could balance sustainable economic activity and marine conservation and create positive impact on the life of the coastal communities. It might also help the Bay states in addressing the skill gap that is endemic in the region, and lack of innovation and technological development also constitute significant barrier. Ladies and gentlemen, earlier technology was not that advanced. Hence, the sea was a forbidden world. And at that time, people only focused on fishing and extraction of the oil. But today, The advent of advanced technologies has opened up new vistas of opportunity. Nations are now trying to exploit and explore the resources of the sea and oceans. In this backdrop, there's a new thinking on the ways and means of use of the sea and oceans. Professor Gunter Pauli, in his seminal book titled The Blue Economy, 10 Years, 100 Innovations, and 100 Million Jobs, for the first time brought the concept of blue economy in 2010. Today, blue economy is ushering a new paradigm of ocean and sea-based sustainable development without jeopardizing the ocean health. It is noteworthy that following the declaration of Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's vision on blue economy in 2014, people of Bangladesh started hoping for a new tomorrow by exploiting the fleeting opportunity of blue economy. And the potential or promising sector for us are the marine fisheries, aquaculture, marine biotechnology, offshore energy and deep sea mining, marine tourism, shipping, port and maritime logistics, shipbuilding, marine manufacturing and ship recycling, and lastly, marine renewable energy. Of course, challenges are there. The three main challenges is related to illegal, unreported, unregulated fishing, ocean acidification, and blue carbon. Nevertheless, facts remains that yet Bangladesh need to go further in bringing a qualitative and quantitative grasp over the blue economy. Before I conclude, I would like to reiterate one point that we need to see at the Bay of Bengal with keen eye, as our future lies in our prowess to extract the maximum benefit out of the sea. We need to focus on harmonizing the nature, the climate, the geopolitics, geostrategy, and the much desired sustainable development in the maritime domain of the Bay of Bengal. Lastly, a few caveats. Number one, Bangladesh must be careful not to be subsumed in the security equation of the big players in the Bay of Bengal. Secondly, Bangladesh, we have to remember, Bangladesh is no more a basket case of 1970s. It is the development wonder of 2020s. And ours is the 7th largest country in the world in terms of the population. So it's a big market. And big powers have interest here. Hence, we need to skillfully exploit the political rivalry of big powers so as to extract maximum benefit for us. And lastly, we must engage in different forums to ensure rule-based order at sea, ensure ocean governance, and harness the blessing of the blue economy to the fullest extent. Once again, I express my heartfelt gratitude and thanks to the Independent University Authority, and I wish success of today's session. Thank you to all. Thank you very much for your patience hearing. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Commodore Absar. And as chairman and founder of the Central Foundation for International and Strategic Studies, during the discussions, I would like to hear something about how strategic are some of these issues, especially the items that you mentioned, acidification and so forth. How strategic are they becoming in our policy making or policy mindset? But in the discussion session. Thank you so much. We are honored to invite His Excellency, Mr. Ito Naoki, to share some of his ideas, knowledge on the Bay with us. We know that Japan is very heavily involved in some of our special economic zones in the area. So we would be very keen to hear what's the relationship between the industrial work there and the Bay itself. Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. Since I'm not an expert on Bay of Bengal, I asked my staff to prepare presentation slides. So that's why it takes time before I start speaking. But please bear with me. And I'd like to congratulate on IUB organizing this wonderful seminar on the UN Day. Because of this, some of the diplomatic resources here in Dhaka have been spent here in this campus from morning to late afternoon, but congratulations. So this is a really wonderful, great effort. And also I'd like to offer my sincere condolences to State Minister Hassan for the demise of, I believe, mother-in-law. So this is a very, very sad moment for him and his family. So our thoughts and prayers are behind their families. But thank you very much for having me here. And I don't know how this slide works, but oh yes, thank you very much. So somebody is handling this, so I need to handle this. Somebody is handling this. Thank you very much. Thank you. Governing Bay of Bengal, FOIP, Free and Open Indo-Pacific, Vision for Peace, Stability, and Prosperity. So this is the topic I'm going to share with you this afternoon. So back in March, IUB was kind enough to organize a symposium on Bay of Bengal. So Ambassador Tariq Krim took a great initiative to organize. Also, he made a great contribution to make a success to this conference. As you can see from this photograph, the Foreign Minister Menon attended. Also, your Vice Chancellor attended back in March. But then we also focused on Bay of Bengal, how we can see further development and prosperity in the Bay of Bengal region. And why Bay of Bengal? As Komodo explained, so it's obvious that Bay of Bengal is a focal point of global economy, and also strategic landscape is really changing. The surrounding Bay of Bengal. So very, very important area and region. We have to really be ingenuitive about how we handle the situation and issues in Bay of Bengal. Economists in Singapore said the center of gravity of the world economy is moving towards this region. In fact, the center of gravity was once in the Atlantic. Then that came through the Mediterranean Sea, but now somewhere between Mediterranean Sea and Himalaya mountain range. So they say that this gravity may be stabilized at the Himalaya mountain range area. But if countries in Bay of Bengal grow further, then you may be able to pull this gravity towards Bangladesh a bit. Although this gravity will never be gone into the sea area, then world economy will be drowned there. But the Bangladesh, the little bit of prosperity and effort, you can really pull this gravity of the economy into this region further. And because of that, this region is full of dynamism and economic growth. So very, very strategic area. So, and then I just jumped to what Japan is doing in this area. Big B, Bay of Bengal Industrial Growth Belt. This is an initiative the two governments, Japan and Bangladesh, jointly launched in 2014. So that is the year when two prime ministers exchanged their visit. So reciprocally, those two leaders visited the respective capitals, Tokyo in May and Dhaka in September. So since next year, we are going to celebrate 50 years of celebration, diplomatic relations between Japan and Bangladesh. So I do really hope that similar exchange of visits will take place in the same year, Dhaka, Tokyo. But that's something I think both capitals and governments need to work out. Once we see the improvement of this corona pandemic situation. But Bay of Bengal industrial growth belt, basic idea is to lay and build industrial zone between Dhaka, Chittagong, and beyond until Cox's Bazar. So between the area, inside this area, now Japan is doing, as you know, some of those flagship projects such as Dhaka Metro project, the International Airport Extension Project, as well as Matabari Deep Sea Port project. I would say Matabari Deep Sea Port is a real game changer. It's going to be the first deep sea port for the country. And if you look at the map, you know, this Matabari will have a very, very impactful function. You know, even just focusing on this transportation hub function, Matabari can connect inside the country, also the region, say countries like Sri Lanka and other countries in South Asia, but also towards ASEAN side. Matabari can connect directly to those big ports in Indonesia, Malaysia, or even Thailand. So Matabari will have a very, very big potential as a transportation hub. But on top of that, Matabari will be waterfront industry hub and power energy hub. So this is what we are planning for the development of Matabari. Now we are engaged with the first stage of development. That is the deep sea port construction, as well as the construction of coal-fired power plants. Now we are doing 1,200 megawatt Unit 1 and Unit 2 coal-fired power plants construction together with the deep sea port. Draft depth of this deep sea port is 18.7 meters. That's almost double the depth of Chittagong port. So real deep sea port will be there. Already we have this 300-meter long berth, and that began functioning December last year. So in probably 3 to 4 years' time, this 300-meter berth will be fully functioning together with the coal-fired plant. Then second phase of stage 1 will be the further dredging and further construction of deep sea port on the, the bottom left side, the part of the port. Then you will also have LNG terminal, LPG terminal, then access road will be there between Matabari and National Highway number 1. So that's the second stage of, second phase of stage 1. Then our plan is go beyond that. That is this stage 2 of Matabari port development. This includes waterfront economic zone, general economic zone, other power hub, but above all, expansion of a port facility. So it's going to have a very big container yard facility. Then as you can see from this slide, Matabari port will deal with 39% of container of the country. Probably in 15 years from now, Matabari will be fully functioning. And also this will be connected to Chittagong by road and railway and power and energy hub, which will generate 42% of power and supply of 42% of natural gas. So this is a function of energy hub and power hub of Matabari and waterfront industry hub, although I touched upon this, but this is designed to be heavy and chemical industrial zone as well. So 15 years from now, or could be 20 years from now, so Matabari will be really the center of industrialization of this country. So that is the plan. And this is the cooperation and collaboration which are going on between Japan and Bangladesh. And this is the very flagship project by JICA, and Japan is committed to develop Matabari to the very end so that we can fully make the most of the potentials of Matabari. This is a photo of Matabari. Maybe you want to look at the top right photo, that is how dredging started. Then bottom right, that is how they are making a port there. But now, as I said, the bottom end of this port part, already 300-meter long path has been constructed. So it is really developing fast and steadily. And I must emphasize that we don't see much delay of construction work of Matabari in spite of the pandemic situation. So we plan to complete the facilities for the operation of power plant by 2024, and work is on course. So probably we are going to see the operation of Matabari port as well as power station sometime in 2024. And we have this policy vision when we do Matabari, when we do other cooperation with Bangladesh and other countries in the region, Bay of Bengal and beyond, free and open Indo-Pacific, FOIP, abbreviated FOIP. So we want to see shared values being promoted in the regions: democracy, freedom of navigation, rule-based international order. I think Commodore mentioned the importance of rule-based maritime order during his presentation. And I firmly believe that Bangladesh shares the value. Bangladesh shares this democratic value. Bangladesh is subscribed itself to freedom of navigation and international rule-based order. One of the good examples is when Bangladesh resolved this maritime border demarcation with neighboring countries such as India and Bangladesh, you fully respected international law. You went through international tribunal and other international legal system. That is a clear demonstration that Bangladesh is subscribing itself to this rule-based international order and fully respecting international law. So since Bangladesh shares values, so we really want to share economic prosperity. We want to share the cooperation, advanced cooperation for peace and stability with Bangladesh. So Japan has been trying to promote practical cooperation under the vision of free and open Indo-Pacific in those areas like quality infrastructure and connectivity, like Matabari, humanitarian assistance, disaster management, disaster relief, climate change, counterterrorism, non-proliferation, anti-piracy, COVID-19 pandemic. The scope of a cooperation, practical cooperation under FOIP is very, very wide across the board. But here in Bangladesh, we are particularly focusing on quality infrastructure and economic connectivity because that is crucial for the economic development of this country. But at the same time, we are doing cooperation in other areas. Freedom of navigation. Yes, we had a port visit by Self-Defense Forces of Japan, October 2019. And since next year is a 50 years anniversary. So my hope is that this Self-Defense Forces ship will come back to Chittagong again. So we have no concrete schedule yet, but that is our hope. So it's good to have a regular visit by those naval ships to this country and this region for the cooperation to ensure freedom of navigation. And second photo is taken only 10 days back. So two of the Coast Guard officers of Bangladesh will be going to Japan to join JICA's capacity building program for the first time. And this year, JICA is providing the course only to two countries. One is Bangladesh and another is Sri Lanka. So we are providing capacity building opportunity to those important countries in Bay of Bengal. And in December, we'll be granting lifeboats to Bangladesh Coast Guard, and I'm looking forward to attending handing over ceremony in Chittagong in December. And Rohingya crisis. The Komodo talked about importance of Rohingya crisis, but this should not be destabilizing factor of Bay of Bengal. Without the stability of Rohingya population, without finding solution through repatriation of Rohingya refugees back to Myanmar, I don't think we will be able to have stability of Bay of Bengal. So in order for us to realize this vision of free and open Indo-Pacific, it's so important to address Rohingya issues. Yes, through humanitarian assistance, yes, we have been providing $150 million US dollars for host communities and Rohingya refugees. And, as you can see from the right photo, 2 ambassadors and 1 high commissioner made a joint visit to Cox's Bazar camps. So we just show solidarity. We just show a commitment to Rohingya issues by those 3 heads of diplomatic missions here. And we also do our efforts of, addressing accountability as well as repatriation issue. The foreign minister saw this special envoy on Myanmar of UN, Wagner, and discussed the situation in Myanmar. So before February the 1st this year, when a military coup happened, actually Japan communicated directly to government and military leaders and to raise the very important issue of repatriation of refugees as well as accountability issue. So we will continue this effort and we will seize every moment whenever we can raise the important issue of Rohingya situation, because this is very much a part of our policy vision of free and open Indo-Pacific. I think this is the final slide, but I cannot overemphasize the importance of role of intergovernmental organization such as BIMSTEC and IORA, even to realize free and open Indo-Pacific. So BIMSTEC is Bay of Bengal focused framework of regional cooperation, mainly technical and economic cooperation, but practical cooperation, as I described, has much in common with the focus areas of BIMSTEC, as well as IORA, connectivity, trade and investment, disaster risk management, even maritime safety. So I know that now Bangladesh is in the chair of IORA, and there will be ministers meeting of IORA November the 17th in Dhaka. So we hope that IORA will advance cooperation so that you will see further peace, stability, and prosperity. Hopefully, in the name of, with the policy vision of free and open Indo-Pacific. As I said, next year, Japan and Bangladesh are going to celebrate 50 years of diplomatic relations. We hope throughout the next year, we'll be able to promote cultural ties, human, person-to-person connect, as well as improvement of business economic partnership. So thank you very much for having me, and I look forward to engaging discussions here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Ambassador. We will get back to discussions on that, and certainly the support we received from Japan, 50 years, tremendous. I would like next to turn to our High Commissioner, His Excellency Professor Sudarshan Sene Viratne from Sri Lanka. Your Excellency, we would like to hear more of what you can do with us in the Bay.
Thank you very much indeed. I must congratulate the university and especially the students who have received their graduation and also for hosting this conference. I feel very close to the United Nations activities which I've been involved, and my congratulations for hosting this event. I'm really not sure whether I'll be, excuse me, leaving you any wiser after the wonderful talks you just heard from my learned colleagues, His Excellencies. But I like to place on track something out of tune in a way, so that we can try to see whether we can focus more on Bay of Bengal per se. I'm very pleased to be here on an invitation from GSG program and by my dear friend, Ambassador Tariq Karim. The panel titled Governing Bay of Bengal has a focus on how we manage Bay of Bengal. Connectivity between Sri Lanka and Bangladesh dates back to about 8th century BCE. In 2022, our two countries will celebrate 50 years of goodwill and solidarity. We are located at the two ends of the bay, nurtured by its waters and oceanic scape. So we have the commonality of our shared destinies. The Bay of Bengal is an oceanic highway. Oceans do not separate people. It is not even a boundary, but a fluid catalyst as a point of convergence. As such, governing Bay of Bengal has wide ramifications, providing entree and access to all lands and its resident communities. They are equal stakeholders holding common ownership to its total ecology, the wind, solar, aquatic, and subsurface mineral resources. In March this year, the Independent University convened a conference on the Bay of Bengal as connectivity hub in the Indo-Pacific region. The present conference, I believe, is a sequel inducting greater focus as the next level of connectivity. Governing Bay of Bengal and its resident community essentially recognizes oceanic water as a common resource and common property. It is a sustainable resource that needs to be harvested and managed with respect. One needs to look beyond the parochial psyche. My presentation is an abstract of a longer paper. It is titled as Bay of Bengal Oceanic Community, or BBOC. There are 4 areas indicating the centrality of Bay of Bengal. As the coastline hinterland symbiosis, IRA and Bay of Bengal Oceanic Community towards a sustainable heritage economy, placing oceanic studies on track, finally. 1, coastal line hinterland symbiosis. The coastal belt and the ocean along with its hinterland had a free flow of people, cultures, and resources. Sunil Gupta from the Allahabad Museum speaks of a Bay of Bengal interaction sphere as a historical reality that had dynamic transoceanic seafaring tradition. Pearls, ivories, semi-precious stones were some of the luxury commodities that moved from Tambapanni, that is Sri Lanka, to Vangadesha or Bangladesh. Chittagong is recorded in historical sources in Sri Lanka as Chittagama. Archaeometallurgical studies indicate, I'm sorry, I'm bringing my subject as an archaeologist, I have to bring this, but these are very important things. We shouldn't forget our past. Archaeometallurgical studies indicate resource movement dating to circa 8th century BCE on copper, gold, silver, and tin, connecting Sri Lanka, Orissa, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Thailand. So this was an exchange network that operated, which is still happening. Historical Tamralipti in the Gangetic Delta was the celebrated copper port. Recent genetic studies shows parallel bloodlines connecting distributed kin groups. What more do we need to be common stakeholders? The BBOC forms an interconnected crescent and unbroken cultural zone. We need to understand the political geography and anatomy of the historical personality of the Bay. It is a complex mosaic representing the plural, inclusive, and shared heritage based on diversity and commonalities spread over time and space. Ayora and Bay of Bengal Oceanic Community. The BBOC is strategically located within a broader oceanic scape of the Indian Ocean rim. The community essentially needs to engage itself within the wider oceanic scape of the IOR. It is an alternative space transcending borders and boundaries of sovereignty. A transoceanic connectivity representing the best of track 2 and 3 diplomacy. This is sustained to a great extent with an adherence to the oceanic industry or the blue economy. Ambassador Bhagirathi, former Secretary General of IORA, stated, "The ocean provides us with the last frontier of development. This is an oceanic industry, what you call a blue economy." In 2007, this idea was narrowed down to the Bay of Bengal by Abdullah Bari from Bangladesh and called it Our Ocean and the Blue Economy, Opportunities and Challenges. Early this year, Ambassador Tariq Karim spoke of the Bay of Bengal blue economy. The blue economy envisages the sustainable harvesting of our oceanic resources. It has wider implications to Bangladesh. In 2019, David Brewster provided insights on a regional agenda for geo-environmental security challenges. He especially noted the impact of rising sea levels in Bangladesh. Bay of Bengal community needs to be conscious of such impediments impacting marine resources. These may spill across geophysical boundaries and trigger off conflict areas. Brewster, in fact, suggested an Indian Ocean Security Forum. Significantly enough, the idea of security concern was realized with the Tricontinental Maritime Security Cooperation since 2013. It incorporates climate change among other security concerns pertaining to the Indian Ocean region. Participating countries are the Maldives, Sri Lanka, India, and Bangladesh and Seychelles as observers. Towards a sustainable heritage economy. Excuse me. I'm trying to go beyond BIMSTEC, which is a more focused economic agenda. Managing the oceanic resources with multiple stakeholders is a sensitive issue. It needs to be supplemented with a sustainable heritage economy for this unique oceanic ecology. As a follow-up to this conference, may I suggest a seminar or conference on shared cultures of the Bay of Bengal community. Here, each of the member countries could showcase the rich shared heritage of their land with the Bay of Bengal culture as its backdrop. It needs to be sensitive to tangible and intangible heritage and have a smooth blending of tradition and modernity. Cross-regional people-to-people cultural connectivity and environmental awareness are two major gains in this venture. This includes the awareness and capacity building process, the revitalization of indigenous arts and crafts that are facing extinction due to globalization, will be another positive gain. The target group will be our next generation and the next leadership, drawn from different ethnic, language, religious, and cultural groups. A major conduit coalescing economic and heritage is the Sustainable Tourism Initiative based on a symbiotic relationship among partner stakeholders. This could be identified with a series of luxury cruise tourism, heritage tourism, religious and spiritual tourism, education, craft, and medical tourism, among other sectors. This is a two-way process and win-win situation. Placing oceanic studies on track. In view of this, we wish to suggest a broader action plan that incorporates a value-added purview of oceanic studies for the Bay of Bengal. It also needs to be direct engagement of its oceanic community. This ranges from modalities of harvesting oceanic resources, climatic factors, trading portals, nautical technology, and oceanographic studies, including aesthetic and poetic inspiration, among other initiatives. The ocean needs to be understood and protected. Finally, at present, the Bay of Bengal in general is challenged by questions of social and environmental cost, conditioned by hegemonic political behavior and aggressive globalization, including its imagined material development. It has resulted in untold misery, damage to lives, property, and crippling effects on the environment and its social fabric. Conversely, humanizing social, economic, and cultural interactions within a sustainable environment is seen as a moral engagement and imperative for this oceanic front. The policy chartered by Bangladesh for its sustainable environmental development is organically linked to how the oceanic front is treated and nurtured as an integral component of its people and their aspirations. The ocean is the great facilitator and selector of its destiny. It is the facilitator that conditions groundwater level, river and oceanic network of connections, control over flora, fauna, forest, and all of its resources, which is the very symbiosis between land and sea. Friends, we need to respect our Bay of Bengal, my Bay of Bengal, your Bay of Bengal, with a poetic love for its seascape and life-giving inspiration. Thank you very much for your indulgence.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Senator Viradne. I was particularly impressed by the oceanic community studies you had mentioned, and I hope we can collaborate further on that. We next go to a virtual presentation, and this is from our BIMSTEC partnership. If you can put us on, please. We will hear from the director, BIMSTEC Secretariat here in Dhaka, Dr. Damaru Balabab Podel. Please, sir, yours.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I would like to sincerely express my condolences to His Excellency Muhammad Shahriar Alam
for some reason.
Am I audible, sir?
Wow,
Trial.
Thank you.
Am I audible?
Trial.
Yes. Sir, proceed.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Trial.
Thank you very much. At the beginning, I would like to express my sincere condolences to His Excellency Muhammad Shahriar Alam for demise of his relatives. His Excellency Mr. Ito Naoki, Ambassador of Japan to Bangladesh. His Excellency Professor Sudarshan D.S. Seneviratne, High Commissioner of Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka to Bangladesh. Professor Tanvir Hassan, Vice Chancellor, Independent University, Bangladesh. Professor Imtiaz Hassan, Head, Global Studies Governance Program, International University, Bangladesh. Commodore Muhammad Nurul Absar, Chairman and Founder, Central Foundation for International and Strategic Studies. Former Ambassador Tariq Karim, Director, Center for Bay of Bengal Studies. Dr. Imadul Islam, Deputy Director, Center for Bay of Bengal Studies. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. As the BIMSTEC Secretary General could not attend this session due to some important meetings, I am attending it. It is indeed a great honor for me to virtually participate at today's second session, Governing Bay of Bengal, on the occasion of Global Day 2021. At the outset, I wish to express my sincere gratitude to the School of Liberal Arts and Sciences, Global Studies of Governance Program of Independent University of Bangladesh for organizing this event and bringing together eminent personalities and policymakers from the Bay of Bengal and beyond to speak in this important session. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, my previous speakers already highlighted many things on the importance of Bay of Bengal region. I also would like to mention here that the role of Bay of Bengal plays in the lives and livelihood of people connected with it cannot be underestimated. The Bay of Bengal has been the cultural heritage since long time, and also the central hub for travel, transport and communication, not just within this region, but also connecting the region with other areas beyond BIMSTEC. The Bay is a strategic location bridging South Asia and Southeast Asia, considering the need of formal linkage between South and Southeast Asia. The leaders of our member states founded BIMSTEC as a regional organization. We feel supported and encouraged by such initiatives and discuss pertinent issues as well as share concerns and ideas on moving forward in our goal to realize the vision of dynamic, effective and result-oriented regional organization. BIMSTEC member states have unequivocally faith in the principle and purposes of the Charter of United Nations, and we strive to strengthen the multilateral system by reforming its rules, institutions, and instruments to make it relevant to contemporary global challenges, and agree to work together to present a collective voice to safeguard our collective interest for a fair, just, rule-based, equitable, and transparent world order, underscoring the importance of robust institutional arrangements to effectively steering the process of regional cooperation under BIMSTEC. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, BIMSTEC region with geographical contiguity, abundant natural resources, human resources, rich historical linkages and cultural ties present great potential for promoting deeper cooperation in identified core areas in the region. For example, connectivity, trade, investment, disaster risk management, energy, technology, tourism, fisheries, agriculture, cultural cooperation, people-to-people contact, poverty alleviation, security issues, climate change, mountain economy, blue economy, and many more, and is committed to making the Bay of Bengal region peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable by building on common strengths through collective efforts, as mandated in the 4th summit of BIMSTEC. BIMSTEC member states have expressed their firm commitment to working together for the implementation of Agenda 2030 for sustainable development, and they have acknowledged enhanced interlinkages and interdependence within the economies and societies in the BIMSTEC member states to provide greater opportunities for regional integration. The devastating impact of COVID-19 pandemic on our health, economy, and society has created a renewed sense of urgency for leveraging geographical advantage and available resources in this region to spur economic activities and address vulnerabilities in the post-COVID-19 recovery and rehabilitation process, intensify regional cooperation to strengthen economic and physical connectivity, to enhance regional trade, investment, travel, technology, energy, and other forms of exchanges to offset the economic losses caused by the pandemic. We need to collectively work to strengthen resilience to combat the challenges of poverty, natural disaster, climate change, pandemics, terrorism, and transnational crimes, and ensure food security through joint actions, keeping in mind that COVID-19 may not be the last calamity to befall this region. The Sustainable Development Goals adopted in 2015 ensures leave no one behind, and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development has now reached in its 6th years of implementation, as the governments, institutions, and mechanisms are working for the shared prosperity, safe and sustainable world. I hope this global day will also motivate us to prosper together with regional integration, peace, and harmony, and make the world safe and better place to live. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, finally, I would like to once again extend my deep appreciation to the Global Studies and Governance Program of Independent University of Bangladesh for organizing this program and bringing together here many experts. From the top of the world to Bay of Bengal, we share the same ecosystem. So we have to work together collectively, not only in climate change, but in many more issues, to collectively make this Bay of Bengal, our Bay of Bengal, prosperous, sustainable, and peaceful. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Director Dr. Paudel. I do want to say that one of our first global studies guests was the Secretary General from BIMSTEC. So we have a good relationship with your institution, and we would really like to build upon that. Thank you once again.
Thank you, sir.
In the absence of His Excellency, the State Minister Shahriar Alam, I am going to turn to our discussion for the session, Ambassador Retired Tariq Karim, who has really been central to not just the conference going on today, arranging many of the guests, but he has been pivotal to creating the Center for the Bay of Bengal Studies here at IUB. Ambassador Bhai.
Good afternoon, everyone. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, Chair, for your kind introduction. And once again, I congratulate you, even though I'm a sort of co-sponsor of putting all these things together, all the threads together, and having an excellent conference going on today. My job as a discussant is simplified because basically I will touch on some of the points raised by the stellar contributions and the thought-provoking addresses given by the previous distinguished panelists. I welcome all of them with great respect and honor, and thank all of them for having graced this panel today with their not only their own perceptions, but how they are themselves involved so intrinsically with the Bay of Bengal. I start with the very thought-provoking and provocative introductory remark made by Professor Imtiaz Hussain. Will the Bay of Bengal become the Rubicon that we need to cross to transform ourselves by establishing a governance regime for the Indian and other oceans? All the panelists have been talking about the need for rules-based and system of law to govern the oceans. We do have, in a sense, a United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, but United Nations conventions and international law are basically customary international law. In other words, in common parlance, it means it is as effective as custom of different countries and their individual goals permit them to do so. Hopefully and happily, many countries do, but there are still countries which do not adhere to all the conventions and do not go by all the rules. My concern as an inhabitant of the Bay of Bengal, and as my very good friend, High Commissioner Sudarshan said, this is my Bay of Bengal and your Bay of Bengal. This is our Bay of Bengal. We first need to take ownership of the bay collectively. It has been mentioned by other panelists that this is a commons. Commons meaning something which nobody owns individually or personally. It belongs to everyone. The universe is a commons. The sky is a commons. Water resources are commons. All natural resources are commons in a sense. And this is one of the unfortunate byproducts which has taken possession of our souls and minds, particularly with the establishment of what was described as the New World Order after 1945, and the setting up of the United Nations and the acceptance of its charter, by then only about 50 countries or so. But then after 1945, we saw a strange phenomenon happening that also marked the end of the colonial era, the end of the era of big powers from Europe capturing as much territory as they could at other places. And remember, students of political science, go back to the Treaty of Westphalia of 1648. What did it do? Treaty of Westphalia essentially told the entities that emerged is that you cannot now raid your neighbor because you're short of some resources. So these borders are drawn. You cannot cross that border. You cannot interfere in that border. You cannot do this, that, and the other things. that person's border is sacrosanct for him. That was, in a sense, the first step in trying to establish order in a disorderly world where everybody was at war with each other and at raiding each other for resources. If any of you have read the comic Asterix in your childhood, you will know how they carried out raids across the border into other villages and just took what they needed and came away. In a sense, that was a progression in the stage of man's progression from a Hobbesian state. And if you go back to the teachings of Hobbes, try and recall how Hobbes described man. He's born free, he has no constraints, everything is open to him. By nature, he will try and grasp everything around him. Then the others followed and said, no, you have to control yourself. The more men there are, the more fights there will be, the more disorder there will be, the more disharmony there will be. So you have to have a rules-based system, and that is how our rules-based system evolved. So in this state, Westphalia took 200 years to stabilize. Then, with the collapse of the colonial order, bursting into the scene were over 100 or 120 nation states. I choose to describe them the post-colonial New Westphalian disorder that emerged. These were people imbibed with the order of Westphalia. My territory is mine, you cannot come here. You cannot do anything here. But in the process, they basically divided and carved their territories which they had owned and governed previously as a holistic whole. And in a sense, the biggest damage was done in our own region and some regions in Africa. Previously, what is historically and civilizationally known as the Indian subcontinent, we didn't have a sense of borders. We had commons. We didn't have the problem of sharing rivers and waterways and dividing forests into East and West Sundarbans. These are commons given by God to be used by everyone together. And we are still grappling with those problems. The air, the sky, the atmosphere, the hydrosphere, the ecosphere cannot be partitioned. Rule number 1 for all students of political science, they are commons. You cannot govern commons through squabbling and bringing your quarrels in there. So the point has been made by other panelists also. We need to nurture the vast resources here, but we need to do it collectively. But to do it collectively, then you also have to develop a collective sense of thinking, a collective approach to what is available, and a collective solution to how you will manage. In other words, we have to sit and talk to each other, identify the areas of problems, and identify the resources that we can harvest and do that. Happily, although we had problems on the land, and we still have in some areas, at least in the oceanic region or the blue zone of the Bay of Bengal, and I think it was described as the last frontier. It's absolutely correct. I have looked on the space is the final frontier, but the blue zone of the world, which is almost 70% of the world's surface, right? Of the waters. That is our last frontier. On this planet, we have only one planet. Maybe the Elon Musks and Bransons will be able to take the rockets and go and colonize others, but not ordinary people like us. We will be left behind on Earth. This Earth is for us to manage, nurture, sustain, and for us to live together peacefully and harmoniously. Now, when this term, the blue economy, came up, the first thought that struck to my mind is, oh my God, are we going to do to the blue economy what we have already done to the brown and green economy? This is the last frontier. Once we have destroyed this last frontier, we have no other frontier to fall back on. Then we will actually, we are well on the way in some sense. I was discussing that earlier with one of my colleagues from GSG. We are already, it seems to me, on a way towards a Hobbesian globalized society. You hear more and more the terms I, me, I self, me first, etc. Where has that collective sense of being we as one? That has gone. So we have to rediscover that, and I think we have to apply that to our commons. Now I come to the Bay of Bengal per se. What was the Bay of Bengal? Some references have been given historically. I have also mentioned, just skimmed over it, but not in depth in my own writings. The region earned its prosperity, the region around the bay, because of the Bay of Bengal. If you look just at Bengal as a geographic entity, I'm not saying geopolitical, but a geographic, a geo-economic entity, it has been known to historians and scholars since as early as I have been able to glean the 4th century. It has been talked about by people from various regions, ranging from West Asia to East Asia to Europe, as one of the richest areas or regions of the world. I read somewhere that during the peak of the Mughal rule, Bengal area alone contributed 40% of global GDP. And during the time of the British era, when Bengal was the largest presidency of Indian colonized, British colonized India, it had the highest GDP, not Bombay, not Madras, which were the other two. They were smaller in size. It also had the highest per capita GDP. And I'll give you one guess. Anyone in the audience, can you say where that per capita GDP was? No takers. Do you know of a town called Shillong? Shillong is just north of us in Meghalaya. That had the highest per capita GDP. Now you will ask, how is that possible? After partition, the Northeast became the most impoverished area in this region. It had the largest concentration of anti-state insurgencies. My good friend Mahmudul Haq himself is Bangladeshi from Assam. He will testify to what, maybe he has faint memories, but his father would have been able to say, of the prosperity that was there in this entire region. Why? Very simple. The British understood it. Our colonial masters understood it. We have thrown that away into the sea. That this was an ecologically, economically integrated region. And when a region is integrated, it works like an organ. I subscribe to the organic view of human society. Every component of human society has a function, but it cannot function on its own. The human body, you cut off the left arm, suddenly the body will flounder about trying to do a very simple and ordinary task. You cut off one thumb, and the silk industry, the muslin industry in Bangladesh died. Okay, so that is the example. So one part of your body cannot survive, the rest will eventually atrophy again or lose their functionality. Now, you translate that simple analogy to the state itself. If a state is united, it will prosper. If it is divided, it will actually destroy itself. We are seeing that just very close around us in Myanmar, and not far away now, one stage of separation or 2 stages of separation from us, Afghanistan. And if they implode and then explode, nobody around is going to be left unscathed. My good friend, Ambassador Ito Naoki, mentioned that if Myanmar spins out of control and destabilization, the entire Bay region, and not just the Bay region, beyond will also not be unscathed. And so I'm glad to see that Japan is now going to be more proactive to try and stabilize the region, help everyone stabilize the region. We need Myanmar as Myanmar needs us. But the problem is we have not talked with each other for the last 4 decades. We have not had any meaningful conversations. If I don't talk to you, and you hear about me from a 3rd person, and I hear about him from a 4th person, we are going to get totally distorted pictures of what we are. And we will approach each other with those distortions in our mind. Our reactions will carry that baggage, and it will create more problems than finding solutions. I thank the participation of the BIMSTEC. It has been mentioned, the regional organizations play a big role. And it's ironic that not long after partition, the partition was 47, it still took several decades before we woke up and said, okay, we need to stop fighting. We need to try and cooperate, because if we don't do trade with each other, where is the prosperity going to come from? And trade at that time in 1985, when SAARC was formed, the intra-regional trade, that is between themselves, was only a little under 2.5% of the global trade. Today, SAARC Secretariat can claim proudly that it is 100% more than what it was. Yes, 100% more, but what is it? 5% of their total global trade. In ASEAN, it's about 40%. In Europe, it's about 50 to 60, 55%. We will trade with countries in our Bangla, Shat Samudra Tero Nodi, away from us. But we will not look and talk to each other right next across the fence. Is that a natural state of affairs? The British realized the importance of this. They were the people who actually gave the Westphalian concept, superimposed it on what existed in the cultural civilization subcontinent to South Asia, and then gave us the sense of Westphalia. But they were treating it as one Westphalia. We separated into 3 Westphalias. And when we separated, we drew the cartographic lines, not just on the land, we drew it across the waters, we drew it across the atmosphere, the forestry, and everything. What's the result? My center recently did some work for the FCDO on the Sundarbans. Now, the Sundarbans, the largest mangrove forest remaining in the world, and that is, we proudly say we have it. It's since 100 years ago, it has depleted already 40 or 50%. That is, you'll see from the records kept meticulously by British administrators who ruled over that region. Now, delving a little further, you will see that the entire Bay region had mangrove forests. they disappeared for one reason or other. Even now in Sundarbans, the forestry is slowly being overcome by hostile vegetation coming from inland. When foreign vegetation comes in that area, the local vegetation, which is the mangrove forest, starts dying away. It's an invasion by an invading species which is non-indigenous. What will happen if the Sundarbans were to disappear in another 100 years? What happened when our three best known cyclones in the last few years struck us? What saved us? The Sundarbans. What saves us from the tidal bore, which is now much higher than it was 50 years ago, coming in with the cyclones, the velocity of which is higher, the frequency of which is much more because of global warming and climate change. And it will continue. We heard earlier in the morning, in the first session, that already in the last few years, our ambient temperature increase has been 1.2 degrees Celsius above from what it existed in the pre-industrial area. Our total target was supposed to be 1.5, and that was, you know, the period was much longer, 2030 or something. But Mr. Azad said 2030 is already here. And this is just 2021. So if this rate continues, 2007 IPCC, I based my first writing on the subject on that report, sometimes in 2005. 20% of Bangladesh coastal areas will disappear. If to 2025, assuming at that time that the population of Bangladesh will be about 200 million or close to that. Again, extrapolating, I said maybe 20% of the population will be displaced internally, and then they will become climate migrants. Last week, I read a report that for the last few years, every year, 40,000 new migrants internally displaced from the climate affected zones pour into Dhaka city. So if it's 40,000 an average every year for the last few years, let's say 5 years, that's how many? You've already added 2 million people. Now, we can't keep going like this. We have to all get together and act, but Bangladesh alone cannot act. Bangladesh alone cannot act. It is something which everybody, so when I first said this to India in 2008, they sat up. I said, well, if 20 million people are displaced, where do you think they will go? Human beings are like water. They will find their way, they will go to the easiest place available. And even if you were to build fortified walls around the entire perimeters of Bangladesh, you will not be able to stop them. So it's not my problem anymore. After 2025, if you do not help us, if we do not work together, they will be your problem. It's deliberately, how shall I put it, alarmist language, but you need a shock treatment sometimes to wake people up and say, oh, okay, we have to rethink the situation. Now, the second reason why Bengal was so prosperous was the reason why Japan is helping us so much now to regain our place in the sun as a prosperous country. The Bay of Bengal provided safe harbor, the entire Bay of Bengal coast. It was the connector between the Western Hemisphere, whether from far places in Europe or West Asia, to the Eastern Hemisphere, right up to China. You will find numerous, every time colonial powers came, they would establish a port along the Bay of Bengal or on the other side along the Arabian Sea coast. But they need to stop somewhere, they need to refuel, they need to get supplies, they need to trade, etc. for everything. Of course, they were also settlers. So the Rohingya refugees, when they claim that they're indigenous, they are, because they're the descendants of settlers who came with these trading vessels from Arabia and elsewhere and settled there and set up ports and intermarried. Now, the history of man is the history of migration. Otherwise, all of us will still be in loincloths in Africa. Okay. And the history of migration is that you adapt, you change, you mix, you cohabit. And so that is something which Westphalia progressively destroyed in us. We are still new Westphalians, I call ourselves. We are still very insensitive in us to our skins being touched by any external point. We are not comfortable yet. And even the biggest Westphalian states feel very insecure. So that is the reason why we have to overcome that. So big or small, we all have to play together. And the Bay of Bengal, blue economy, I was afraid that Bay of Bengal also presents huge ecological challenges. It's not just our ability to, there was one World Bank projection that Bangladesh can harvest $3 trillion. But $3 trillion, what happens to the two dangers that are there, the three dangers? The dangers to the Sundarbans. We have to change our habits. Why did the mangrove forest disappear in other countries? We have to take, again, do deep research. Was it man-made activities? Was it industrial activities? Was it bringing cash crops and replacing the mangroves with something else? We don't know. It needs collaborative research. Number two, out of the total area of the Bay of Bengal, we have in the Bay, and only in the Bay, not in the Arabian Sea or anywhere else in the Indian Ocean, East or West or Southern Indian Ocean, 62 or 60,000 plus square kilometers of the dead zone. And this was discovered by accident about a decade ago. What's a dead zone? Where the imbalance between oxygen, nitrogen, and other things are disturbed, the balance, and living creatures, so fish swimming in will die of asphyxiation. Now, we are still not able, we don't understand it because we are still not able to harvest or address more than 10%. It's under 10% of the total economic zone awarded to us. But the more we go out into the sea, it's not very far from Bangladesh coast, the more we will encounter this problem. Now, what's causing it? Is it effluence from us, all of us? After all, the two major eastern Himalayan rivers have nowhere else to go through except Bangladesh? Or is it something coming from the south upwards? Because the Bay of Bengal is a unique confluence where the trade winds, the southeast and the northwest and all these other trade winds, forces the direction of cyclones into this funnel. It's also a confluence of different ocean currents, whether surface currents or undersea currents, which push things in. So again, we cannot do this alone. We cannot pinpoint this alone. We cannot address this alone. The third one is marine plastics. And slowly they are accumulating. One projection is that in 50 years, the entire Bay of Bengal will become a plastic soup. There are such soups already in the Pacific and in the Atlantic, vast space, but they are huge oceans. Bay of Bengal is just a bay, although it is the largest bay of the world. What makes it strategically important and what we should be taking seriously is that it is increasingly going to be a contested bay. It is at the crossroads between all navigation routes from west to east and east to west. A big percentage of the cargo, strategic cargo, carried in the Indian Ocean passes through across the Bay of Bengal, because they also discharge some of the cargo in ports in the Bay of Bengal before going on. The Japanese interest in Matarbari is very, very natural. To keep the sea lane open is very, very natural. It is in everybody's interest that we should keep the sea lanes open, because if that stops, it's a choke point. We don't want it to be a choke point. We want it to be an open passage. It is in Bangladesh's interest, in everyone's interest. But local insecurity in any country spilling over into other countries is going to create problems where it will spin out of control. In which direction? I challenge anyone to try and predict it. You know, brinkmanship always has a habit of getting out of hand. One stupid action by one lone actor somewhere can stir up a whole chain reaction which you cannot control later. Now, it has been mentioned earlier in the morning, two competing powers. We have two competing narratives. Both narratives, God forbid, should not come to armed clash. All of us will suffer. We want it open to everyone, mercantile shipping, friendly shipping, even armed shipping, but friendly shipping. Okay, so I have to wrap up now. We will continue in the sustainable development. I'll try and bring some other ideas. The entire thing, we have to work together in the Bay of Bengal. Bangladesh is poised to regain its position as the central hub of connectivity and economic development. The fact has been mentioned that we have and I have written about it, that we have to start thinking of a Bay of Bengal community. Whether we call it an oceanic community or whichever community, it has to be, we have to think of it as a community. In that sense, I think BIMSTEC is still a sectorial, technical, economic, sectoral cooperation body. When it was named BIMSTEC, that's an accident. They just kept the original Bangladesh, India, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, Thailand economic cooperation. And because two more countries joined, then they said, okay, we can't keep changing the names. We'll keep it Bay of Bengal, Institute for Multisectoral and Technical Economic Cooperation. But if you're talking of Bay of Bengal, then this is an incomplete configuration. Because the Bay of Bengal stretches from Sri Lanka on the southwest coast of the bay to Indonesia, Sumatra in the southeast. So two very, very important economic countries. They have depth, they have population, they have resources, they have everything, are left out, Malaysia and Indonesia. They need to be active partners. We need to draw in and Myanmar as a proactive and cooperative partner, not a disruptive partner. With these remarks, I will close. I thank you, and I apologize for having you.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Tariq. That was a very erudite presentation, and we learned a lot from it. I'd really like to thank all of the presentations here, but let me leave that for Dr. Imad and your presentation, please. After which I think I would like our students to make their gestures to the guests.
Thank you so much, sir, for your nice introductions. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, honorable chief guest, honorable vice chancellor, and distinguished panelists, and all present. My name is Dr. Ahmadul Islam, and I'm here today for vote of thanks. I'm really gratified for giving me chance to deliver vote of thanks speech to such a wonderful audience. I, on behalf of organizers, pass my warm thanks to all of the audience for their significant presence in this event. I especially want to thank our chief guest, though he is not present today, but my sincere condolence goes to his family for his current departure. Here I want to say special thanks to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, who is the anchor of this university, His Excellency Tanvir Hassan, PhD. So it was truly impossible without your motivation and dynamic leadership for arranging this event. I would like to take this opportunity to express our hearty thanks to His Excellency Ito Naoki, Ambassador of Japan to Bangladesh, for his valuable presence and thoughtful sharing. Here, I would like to mention that in his very thoughtful sharing, he tried to mention the Japan contribution to the Bangladesh, how infrastructure helps us, which is really important for a country which dreams to become a developed country by 2041. So Japan is our long-term friends in Bay of Bengal areas, not only the Bay of Bengal areas in this region, to become a Bangladesh, be a developed country in 2041. So thank you, sir. And in your country words, arigato gozaimasu. I also extend my thanks to His Excellency Professor Sudarshan, High Commissioner of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka to Bangladesh, for his very detailed and thought-provoking sharing. I must say special thanks to Professor for really, really enjoyable and very informative sharing in this particular events. We are very thankful to Dr. Damaro Ballabha Padel, Director, BIMSTEC Secretariat, for his virtual presence and thoughtful sharing. I may also like to express our sincere thanks to Commodore Muhammad Nurul Afsar, Chairman and Founder, Central Foundation for International and Strategic Studies, for his valuable sharing. I also wish to share our gratitude to discussant. So none other than one of the most very popular diplomat in the Southeast Asia, His Excellency, retired Mr. Tariq Karim. He's the Director Center of Bay of Bengal Studies, Independent University, Bangladesh. I must say thank you so much, sir. Last but not least, I'm also very grateful to the moderator of this event, Professor Dr. Imtiaz Hussain, for his excellent coordinations. Once again, a warm thanks to all the participants in this hall and online for making this event a grand success. Finally, I would like to say that this is Bay of Bengal community. It's a very big community. So governing the Bay of Bengal is more important if we want to make a Bangladesh as a developed country by the 2041. So governing is sustainable way is key. So thank you so much. Thank you for the audience and giving me a chance to deliver my vote of thanks. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We want to, for your kind attention, we have a small piece of appreciation to our honorable guests. So first, I like Professor Imtiaz Hussain to give a flower bouquet to our Ambassador of Japan, His Excellency, Mr. Ito Naoki. So it's given by jointly by Ambassador retired Tariq Karim. May I now request Ambassador Tariq Karim to give a flower bouquet to His Excellency Professor Sudarshan D.S. Sinivaratne, Honorable High Commissioner of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka to Bangladesh. And may I now request Ambassador Tariq Karim to give the bouquet to Commodore Muhammad Nurul Afsar, Chairman and Founder, Central Foundation for International and Strategic Studies. Distinguished guest, we are about to start our last session and next session of today. But before that, we have some snacks for you. So please help yourself and take, and you can just have your tea by sitting also.